I'm going to talk about limited work in progress, which is something it's really good to talk about flow if you're continuously delivering. But rather than just talking about it, because get quite dull even for only 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to show you it. Rather, our 2 helpful volunteers are going to show you it. What they're going to show you is that there is more to the benefits of limiting the amount of work you're doing at the same time to the beyond context switching. We know about the distraction of switching from one task to another, but there are other things which we'll try and observe. So what's going to happen is Matthew is of the impression that if you start all your work at the same time, you'll get through it all the faster, and it's a much better way of getting through the stuff you need to do. You've got lots of work on there. I mean, look at that huge workload. It's going to be quite... Whereas Sarah believes that, if you do one task at a time, it might work out differently. So we're going to see who's right. So I'm not going to set a timer. We're going to just use our own sense, and I'm going to invite you to go for it. Thank you. I'll start eating. Let's see what we... These are the small ones. Anyone counting? How are we doing here? You enjoying this? I'm very game volunteers.
So one of them doesn't get blocked.
That would be a challenge, wouldn't it? That would be an issue. I hope neither of them hiccups. Yeah. Well done. Well, Sarah's just about finished hers. Well done. A big round of applause for our volunteers. We'll let them recover a moment. Do you want to get a drink, Matthew? Have you got a drink to hand somewhere? Anyone want to reach Matthew a drink? I think might need a drink to wash this down with. So whilst they're recovering and getting a drink to wash down these lovely marshmallows, the thing we can notice about the time, one of the things we think about with is effects of work-wise. Before I ask them how they feel, because they're still recovering, time-wise, they both took about the same amount of time to kind of get to beginning to end, and that is one of the things that doesn't happen. You don't necessarily get the first all of it done more quickly by going one at a time, but that's when Little's law kicks in. If you're doing 5 things, then everything takes 5 times as long. So in this scenario, it did actually get finished more quickly going one at a time. Time, other than time though, how did that feel? Sarah, how did that, you haven't got a mic, but how did that feel to you?
It's fine.
Fine?
Yeah.
Tasty? Enjoyable?
Yeah.
Yeah. Matthew, how did that feel? Not much fun. Not much fun. Okay. So what else did we observe? What if they'd hiccuped? Somebody talked about if they got blocked. So a slight hiccup. Sarah could have dealt with her hiccup quite easily. She could have just dealt with the problem and moved on. Whereas if Matthew had hiccuped, I think everyone would have been up here trying to give them the Heimlich manoeuvre and really being massively unhelpful. It would have been, more people would get involved if it was an issue that much bigger. What about, how hard it is to release and to swallow? It literally, Sarah's marshmallows were bite-sized and much easier to swallow if there's less on the go. Matthew got properly bogged down in his in trying to finish off his marshmallows. What if there'd been something really weird and crunchy in the middle of those marshmallows? Sarah was fully appreciating the taste of each of her marshmallows as she went. Her first one, if there'd been something odd about it, she would have noticed, and if she really wanted to politely get rid of it, she could have done much more easily. Matthew would have taken him longer to notice because he had all of these marshmallows in the go, and it would have been a much uglier process of trying to deal with those defects. What if they'd had an allergy to these marshmallows? So if their tummy rejected it, Sarah might have felt a little bit queasy, but Matthew would have been potentially quite unwell for a few days after all of those. So the impact of trying to do something would have been slower to get the feedback, and it would have been much more impactful. what if I actually only wanted them to eat white marshmallows once it started? So Sarah, after one marshmallow, could have very quickly changed her priorities and focused on those white marshmallows, whereas Matthew would have been there for quite some time, finishing what he already had underway before he could then respond to that change in focus. And what about that delay? You know, how do our customers feel if they're waiting for ages? You know, so Sarah's tummy, who enjoyed the marshmallows, was kept happy for quite regularly by having smaller and regular dispatches of marshmallows, whereas Matthew's tummy was just getting hungrier. And that's what happens with customers. The longer they wait, the more they want, and the bigger your project, the requirements come in. They just say, while you're at it, while we're waiting, can you just add this on as well? And then there's down to how they felt, which is not to be underestimated. You know, the raising the morale, the satisfaction of actually finishing things and getting through things and not feeling overwhelmed by having all this stuff building up and not actually finishing stuff. It's a huge impact. Which leads us to the last point, which is also, most of the points so far have been about the impact of batch sizes, I guess. But the other part about your work in progress is not just the batch size, it's the way you're flowing through your work. So what if this had only been one step in your workflow and actually we needed marshmallows consumed faster than Sarah could one at a time? Well, more people could have joined in. I could have helped her. I could have picked up some of those marshmallows and got through them. Much harder to do if they're already in Matthew's mouth. So workflow improvements, much easier if it's not all in one go. And that's it. I'm hoping that that illustrated some of the points and the value of limiting your work in progress. And that's it. Thank you.